Whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming. We're going to talk about Zoom today. Zoom is like GoToMeeting or Adobe Connect or Skype, Scopa better. And we have currently a subscription to Zoom here through Shepherd. So if you fall in love with Zoom, you can have a license. We'll set you up with that. And Ben is an expert Zoomer, and he's going to show you all the bells and whistles of Zoom, but it's very user-friendly, and you can use it for several things in your classroom. And so he's going to show you how he uses it for a whole host of things. And I hope you like it, and I hope you'll want to use it more. So Ben, thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks, Lauren. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure.
Let's see. I think what my plan today is to do sort of divide the presentation into two halves. The first is where I'll go over some of my experiences with Zoom in the classroom. I've taught two courses remotely through Zoom, one through Subclass Digital, another one through a partnership with Loyola Chicago. So I'll go over those, and they would run in very different ways, so two different models through which you can attack this. And then we'll do a live demo. Now, Rich and Adam in IT have graciously volunteered to help me out with that. So we'll go over how certain features in Zoom that I think are very useful in the classroom. So I guess we'll start out with that, and it's kind of a backwards way to proceed. Start out with the outcomes before going into the actual nitty-gritty of running Zoom in the classroom. And again, I'm sorry if some of the features are getting cut off by the Zoom window here. All right, so I guess I'd like to start out and say that the classes I've taught have been synchronous learning courses online, which is to say that they're not the typical online course. I think most of us who are familiar with online teaching have done online courses through Sakai, Blackboard, or some other program. These are often not live action classes. They're done through the use of message boards, and assessment is usually done remotely. So they're not organized in the traditional classroom function. So I want to make a very clear statement before going forward here that I'm going to be talking about synchronous online courses and not necessarily the more traditional WB Rocks or many of the online courses that we offer here at Shepherd. Again, I think that the goal with synchronous classes is to try as best as we possibly can to conduct a seminar, a fairly traditional seminar, in an online environment. And that's what we've tried to do both with the Subclass Digital classes that we've taught and in some of the other classes we've done on campus. And just when we're developing, and I've developed both of the courses that I've taught via Zoom in conjunction with other academics at partner institutions. And when we were coming up with the courses, we found it very useful to think about what sort of model of course we'd be delivering, how are we going to divide labor, how are we going to structure these courses. And in the end, the two that I've taught have been very different and very distinct. The first is what we called, or what my co-teacher called, the bifurcated classroom model. And the idea here was that we would use Zoom to enlarge our classes, to structure the classroom as if this isn't a projector, it's a window into another class on the other side of the other side of the wall here. And then we'd run our sort of enlarged seminar class that way. This meant that we use Zoom to facilitate communication between two classrooms and not necessarily between individuals within those classrooms or amongst individuals in those two classrooms. Those students who did feel the need to could also join via their own personal devices, computers and phones, etc. But again, in terms of course delivery, it was structured as a very conventional sort of lecture seminar course. Again, the idea was to enlarge the classroom, but still have that sort of bricks and mortar component to it. A number of my colleagues have sat in on that. I think Dr. Alexander sat on at least one session. The second model that we used was the remote classroom model, in which each student essentially zoomed in from home. There was no brick and mortar component to that at all. And I think it's this model that, that worked a lot better for us, and I'll go over why that would be the case in a second. But again, very different, and how you approach teaching with the technology in each of these models is, of course, quite different as well. So let's start, I guess, with that bifurcated classroom model. I taught a course called, and you know, for somebody who hates puns, as my colleagues can say, I felt the need to pun for this one. It was the American Revolution. The revolution will be digitized, and it was a class team taught between Shepherd University and, again, the Loyola University Chicago. So two traditional American Revolution courses taught at the same time. We didn't have to push anything through the administration or anything like that, but the idea is we would team touch it together. And that was the course in which we tried to enlarge the classroom and just use Zoom to connect the two classes. What we saw in this instance was that students were quite relaxed with the technology. I think they, because the model seemed so familiar, they didn't seem too frightened or too off-put by the fact that we were using Zoom and other sort of tools in the classroom. Again, it felt for them like a conventional class, and this is based upon the feedback that they gave us afterwards. It was also very useful to have faculty and IT staff on site if there were issues with the technology. So on numerous occasions we had to rely on Jody and on the Adams and Rich to help us out with some of the technology. This was true on the other end too at Loyola, so that was helpful. You don't have that sort of safety network if you run a class remotely. The disadvantages, though, I think I wouldn't use this model again. I wouldn't try it because of the disadvantages. The setup, firstly, is cumbersome, and classroom discussions are difficult to manage. One thing that we noticed is that the Loyola students, there were a few graduate students in that class as well, who tended to want a little bit more out of the class and were very active participants. Very early on, it seemed that our student profiles didn't really mesh, so the Shepherd students became quite intimidated by a number of the students at the other institution. And in that sense, they kind of closed down very early on in the discussion. So we had to adapt this model and sort of use, the first half of the course would be we'd have online discussions, and the second half of the course, we then reverted to a traditional classroom. That was the only way I could really get our students to engage with a lot of material. Again, it's a bit cumbersome in the sense that when people want to talk in class, we had a microphone set up in the middle of this room, in fact, and so you'd have a bunch of students yelling into the microphone at different times. That was very hard to manage that, and it was the same on the other side of the equation too. So again, that wasn't great. Also, students who are uncomfortable with the technology can hide during class discussion here, just as they can hide in a normal classroom scenario. And if they were, well, and it's not necessarily just an issue of their discomfort with the technology, if their discomfort with the content as well. We found that there were quite a few students just never chimed in, didn't participate actively, and we had to find different ways to draw them out. And it was made all the more difficult by this model. From my experience, each room, students in each group did not make the effort to connect with students at the partner institutions. They didn't have to. In effect, they created their own classroom culture here, and that's one thing that we were trying to avoid. We wanted them to reach out and to talk to other students at a different institution, to reach out to the other faculty member. Both faculty members agreed going forward that we would serve as advisors to whatever students approached us, either from Loyola or from Shepherd. So if there were, for instance, students who were interested in my research topic, they could, for their final project, come out and reach out to me, and I would supervise those projects. What we found is no students really took us up on that. They all just went to their faculty on campus, and they didn't attempt to reach out to us, nor did they really attempt to reach out to each other. So we had to form groups outside class to facilitate that sort of communication. So again, I think by and large this model didn't work, and I don't think we would do it again this way. Towards the end of the class, we then reverted to a remote a remote classroom model, and that worked a lot better. Does anybody have any questions about this bifurcated model, what I mean by that? Yeah.
Do you think that if the schools were better matched, I mean, our students, taking a back seat, and if you've got graduate students from Loyola in there, that, they are going to be a very different thing. If there were two schools that were really peer schools, might it work better?
I think it might. In that context, it might. One of the problems we also had here is that we were running it as a seminar with very little lecture content, and really what we found is that you just double the size of the seminar, really. And in that sense, I think it might work better if both the institutions are more equally matched, but also if the classroom sizes are small to accommodate the fact that you have this large student group.
Right.
Even with two faculty members managing those discussions, we still found it very difficult.
So how big were the classes?
So the Shepherd class was about 15 students, and that was a history and honors class. The Loyalist class was about 17, 18 with graduate students. So again, yeah, the classes weren't mismatched. I think that was a problem, but I do think it could work better with smaller classes and with more equally matched institutions. This is just a sort of a summary of what we did. Now we use this also. We wanted to. The reason we turned to Zoom in the first place is not just because we wanted our students to reach out to other students at a different institution or faculty at another institution. We also hoped that we could deliver a content and skill-based class geared towards online and digital projects. So the end result was that we created a joint web page where students would upload their various projects or their blog posts onto the site, and it would be publicly visible. Again, it was a content-driven digital history course, so because it did focus on the American Revolution, all the skill sets were designed with that in mind. But students then had their hand in designing web pages, doing a blog. We use different tools like Voyant, Google Analytics, Kumu, which is a networking tool, and we take moments in each class to go over those sort of skill sets. So that's just to give you a sense of what the class was in general. Again, the two classes met once a week, and one of the problems we might have, the reason I flagged that up is because, as you well know, if you teach an evening class once a week, that by the third hour of that class, the students are flagging anyway. So this is if we did it again, we might not do that. It just came down to a scheduling issue, really. And that's the WordPress page. If any of you are interested, obviously I think recorded on for posterity.
Was that your co-plaque?
No, this wasn't the
That was
co-plaque.
not.
This was our own initiative.
Okay.
This is that brings us nicely to the co-plaque digital course. So the next model is the remote classroom model, and this is what we employed for co-plaque digital. It enables students to attend class from home. So what we did find is that attendance rates were near perfect across the network, partially because they had nowhere to hide. We would know, but also because they rolling out of bed was no excuse. Often they would show up in their pajamas, or on one occasion we had a FedEx delivery man came to one of the houses, and there was this moment of panic where the student realized that she couldn't stand up to get the door because she wasn't wearing anything presentable from here down. So attendance isn't an issue, but this, I think, really does encourage, because it breaks down the traditional classroom. When students, as we'll see in our live demo, when they see their peers in the remote classroom, they don't get a sense of who's at what institution. Everybody's jumbled together. So it did encourage students to engage with other students in different institutions. I'd have to say that this is relatively easy to manage compared to the bifurcated model because Zoom is so user-friendly, basically. And as I'll bring this up at a later point, but we did have technical issues with the University of North Carolina's digital lab. to the point that at one point my co-teacher and I decided we're not going to use them anymore. We'll just run the whole class off Zoom on our own subscription, and we never had to rely on IT or anybody else for that matter at that point. So again, I think it's very user friendly, and in that sense I would really actively encourage everybody on campus to be taking advantage of this. The disadvantages were that at the very beginning, students are obviously worried about these classes. They're unfamiliar with it. We didn't have it this time around, but I can foresee an issue where students who might be from a disadvantaged background, who don't have the latest iPhone or don't have a laptop, might be turned off initially by this sort of a class. That said, I think we did make it very clear at the beginning that the library does have has laptops that they can rent out to you in the library space if you need that. If you have any problems with that, you can reach out to us as well. But again, there are those stumbling blocks, those hurdles to get around. But those were really the only disadvantages that I had to say. And I was a bit worried about this sort of a classroom when I came into it, because I'd never done anything like this. I thought that it'd feel really impersonal, and that we'd lose the students along the way, but we didn't find that to be the case. So again, this is the CoPlac Digital. We ran this course, The Social Life of Books, through spring 2017. It was popular enough that CoPlac has gotten back to us and asked us to run it again for next year, but sadly my co-teacher is on sabbatical, selfishly. So we will not be able to run it again next year. It was essentially a book history course that the point of which was to get students to engage with different sort of digital skills, web design, blogging, etc. Now, also you'll note that class met remotely twice a week, so we did break it up. We were able to break it up in a bifurcated model. And there is it was called The Social Life of Books, which translates to Slav, and they wanted us to change it. We were very belligerent that we wanted Slav, so yeah, Slav, we have it. All right, now those are the two models through which we organize these courses. I'd like to say just before we go into the live demo that you don't necessarily have to follow our lead on that. Zoom has also proven very useful in more traditional courses. For instance, Dr. Gordon has been running a Saturday symposium for teachers who want to increase their knowledge on Asia and incorporate more Asia themes into their classrooms. I don't know who the funder is, but it's been quite popular. On numerous occasions, I volunteered to come in and help with the Zoom setup for guest speakers. So they've been able to get people, experts in Japan and various other institutions into this fairly traditional classroom via Zoom. And the students have been able to engage with them as if they're in the classroom. So that's one way you can use Zoom in your just normal classes. I've also used it quite frequently for advisement and for students for students who can't make my office hours. So I established a Zoom office hour where anybody remotely just get a hold of me via the computers. Of course, there's some difficult issues with advising that you want to talk over Zoom because it will automatically record you. So that's something to keep in mind, but we can talk about this later. I haven't done this because I'm not cruel, but you could get around the issue of snow days by saying no excuse. You could still Zoom in unless power's gone, in which case I want notifications. But again, so these are different ways you can incorporate Zoom not only just into your ordinary classrooms, but also into your advisement or regimen as well. Again, it's not just for digital skill courses. It covers that. It also, I think Zoom and these sorts of courses present a great opportunity for regional, national, and even international collaboration. I didn't attend this session on COIL run by Charles Neiman up at the International Student Center, but I imagine we could be doing something similar outside of these institutions, really. For instance, for those of us who have international links, we could reach out to colleagues across across the world to organize co-teach sessions together through the Zoom through the Zoom program. Again, I've had a number of education people in the education department come up to me and ask about how we might be able to use Zoom within the context of sort of West Virginia teaching programs, etc. And I think it's very useful in that sense. Obviously, COPLAC, who we're a member of, is increasingly trying to sell greater collaboration through programs like Zoom. So again, that would be very useful. And as I hope to demonstrate today, I might spectacularly fail in doing so. But it doesn't. This program is very user-friendly and very intuitive. I sell myself as a digital humanist, but in my heart of hearts, I'm a Luddite. So I was able to manage this, with very little oversight. So another advantage. Okay, at this stage, I'd like to. Are there any questions about anything I've covered here? Yeah.
Did you run into any issues, specifically with your remote course?
Mm-hmm.
Any bandwidth issues messing up? Because I asked that because I did my master's degree fully online, and we used the remote model, but they always told us never to use the video feature because the bandwidth issue over such a broad area really could muddy the class to the point that it became inoperable.
That's a great question, and I'd say we did show videos in both courses, both the American Revolution and the COPLAC digital course. It worked a lot better for the first, where everybody, you're just relying on one mode of transmission. So those videos looked great, and indeed, when Dr. Gordon had his speakers in from Japan, for instance, they showed videos, and it was fine, right? When we tried to do the same in the COPLAC digital course, there were bandwidth issues, and that was problematic. It just didn't work very well. So we tried to show YouTube videos, for instance, and that sort of thing, and it didn't work. But that can improve in time, and I imagine it's improving all the time. Anyone else have any?
What kind of equipment's involved with it? I mean, so for example, if we wanted to, let's say, we took Jim and put him in the middle of Antietam battlefield, and that's something I think that we could share across the country with somebody who's interested in the Civil War and they live in California. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And
can we do it live from there, or do we have to?
We're doing it right now with that.
Yeah.
And that's all we would have to have.
That's it. And most of my students, when they would chime into the COPLAC digital course, did so through their phones. So you could run a seminar from your phone. You can also chime in through your phone as well. And that's really it. As long as you have a working camera and a working microphone, and you have certain specs on your computer, which most modern computers have. This is no problem. At least in our experience so far.
I supervise a student group, the Tau Sigma Honor Society, and when everyone can't make their meetings, some students Zoom in. So even for students are doing it on their own already,
I have a grandson that's always doing it with me, he's 12, and we're just curious about, in terms of what we would need to do something more than, one-on-one.
Yeah, now I think, and I'm going to make fun of Jim Brimall in front of the entire campus community. I think it really depends on the individual's capability. I think, I could see if, for instance, Jen was out there with him and filming him because he's so animated.
I was going to say, we have to teach him to stand still.
Well, not necessarily. We would just have to teach whoever's filming him to keep up, really. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so I think at this point I'm going to try to show you the live demo. Okay. All right, everyone. You're on the screen here. This is Rich, Adam, somebody named Sam, and a couple of bots. Now, in order to show some capabilities here, I'm also signed in on my phone as another Ben Bankhurst. So there's two of me. So I think what I'd like to do, Rich, can you unmute and just introduce yourself, just so we can demonstrate the capabilities?
speaker is loud.
Okay, great. All right. Now let's mute again. So one thing I would, I guess to start with, before going into the different capabilities here, I'll start with some etiquette that we learned as part of the COPLEC digital training session. When you start your first meeting, it's always it's a good idea to make sure everybody's muted. That way you don't get any feedback loops. And whenever anybody
I thought I had it muted.
This is inevitable hiccup. Whenever, and this is something that students will learn on their own very quickly. They'll learn the etiquette, and they'll know they come in, they start their video, they automatically mute, and when they want to chime in, they'll unmute. And they have different ways of communicating that they want to chime in to the discussion. Some of them are just eager, they'll unmute, just yell at you like a normal classroom, but most will follow sort of the protocol. I have to say that I think the first time you organize a class, you have to assume that the first meeting, what we would consider the syllabus day, is going to be spent just troubleshooting all of these issues. But speaking from experience, I would say that the students do pick up on this very quickly, and they're ready to roll within the second or third meetings. They've gotten sort of the protocol down. All right. Okay, so I guess some basic features I'd like to start with. And now I'm currently the administrator. We're managing 7 participants, which is a strikingly high number. Kind of worries me. So we'll click on that. That gives you a list of all of those people who are participating. So here we have 2 Ben Bankhursts, 2 Richard Lanhams, Adam, Keith, and Simpson. So as an administrator, you have access to a bunch of different features. We have a polling feature. You can share your screen. You're also the custodian of the meeting. But as somebody who has a professional subscription, as we all do here, you will have the opportunity to also delineate responsibilities through co-hosting. So if you are team teaching this across two partner institutions, you can grant the other faculty member a hosting capabilities. Okay. Now here we also have the Zoom chat. And most,
Sorry.
No, don't worry.
I do. I thought I was muted, but it's not. And I will work on that.
That's okay. I'll mute mine. So you have your participants and your groups, your group chat. Now it's always good to have, in our experience, we have group chat on all the time, and it's also a way for students. Say you're in the middle of explaining a point, and a student develops a question that they would like to ask, but they're afraid to just chime in at that moment. We encourage them to list their question in the chat, and then we can come back to it at a convenient moment. I also have to say, one of the unnerving aspects of the chat is students can develop side conversations, which can be very useful, but can also be it's outside of your control. So you can technically limit that if you'd like. But we thought in both classes it was a very good way to develop a rapport among students, even if it was at our expense. So we didn't restrict it. Okay. Hey, Rich, Adam, could you do me a favor and raise your hand? So you'll note here that Rich has raised his hand. This is a feature that is that's listed on, and so there goes Adam as well. This is a way of indicating that they have a question they want you to call on them, or they need some sort of feedback. You can then either lower your hand, you can unmute them yourself and have them ask the question. It's often fun to slap down their hands. but that's one way that they can get their attention to get you to speak or to listen to them.
Can you control which student is the main, on the main part of the screen there?
Well, actually, so that's a great point. Let's look at how you can organize it. So you have two views via Zoom. One is the gallery view, sort of the Brady Bunch view, and on a different computer, all of these you can limit how many screens you want or how many students you want to pop up. Usually, it'll those that are listed are the people who have most recently contributed, so the top 3 or top 4 who have contributed something recently. Let's see, but the other view is the speaker view. This is the gallery view. The other view is the speaker view, so it's whoever was speaking at the moment. So you have 2 view options.
Is Adam Page choosing not to be seen?
He is.
Okay.
He's being wily.
Do you require your students to have webcams or not?
Yes, usually.
Okay,
That said, if they were to have a problem with it, we wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't have an issue with it. So say they can't afford a webcam, then that's fine.
And do you require them to call in or have a microphone?
We require them to have a microphone.
Okay.
So basically, all students should have the ability to be able to communicate both visually and audibly or orally as if it were normal. That's the basic requirements that we have for them. Now, one of the great things that you can do as an administrator is you can share your screen. So it's through that screen share option that you can. Currently, I'm sharing my desktop, but I'm going to share my whiteboard because that will offer some issues.
I actually have a question.
Yeah. So.
What was everybody seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was seeing, like, why weren't they seeing you? So you don't get, you're not one of those boxes?
On their screen, I will be. I will be just a normal
So Rich
person.
was seeing you?
Rich will see me, but they will see, what they are seeing is essentially the gallery view. So they'll see their other peers. They will also see whoever most recently spoke. I haven't enabled that feature either. And this is one feature, this is a whiteboard feature, but what I would say, and I'm horrible at this, what this enables them to see is whatever I'm doing on the screen. So they can all view this via the screen share. Shut that off.
So Ben, that green squiggly line is actually me.
Is that you?
Sorry about that, I was being curious. That's
Okay, so
can you shut that off so students
You can,
cannot
so
do
you
that?
can do it just as a
So you
host
can
feature.
prevent
Yeah.
the people in meeting.
But one feature of this I wanted to cover here. We have raising hands, the screen feature, the share screen. So if I were to share my screen, if I had that PowerPoint still up, I could share that PowerPoint with them. Indeed, that's what I was doing throughout the entirety of the first portion of the presentation. They could see that PowerPoint. Okay, everyone, can you hear me? How about you, Rich?
He said yes.
Great. Now, Rich, lots of head nodding, that tends to be the way. All right. Okay, Rich, so one of the problems we had discussed is the group, the breakout rooms function. But unfortunately, it's not coming up on this screen, which is just one of the natures of the beast. One thing I would have liked to go over is a function that we found very, very useful for both Coke Digital and the bifurcated model, which is the breakout room function. So one of the concerns that you might have with a course like this is that you can't, if you have a gallery view of 20 to 30 odd students, how are they going to relate to you in class time? How are they going to, if you open it up to an overall discussion, you might have students that can still hide from you in that context. The breakout room function enables students, you to set up different breakout rooms, either automatically or manually, and allows you to place students in different rooms to effectively do group work. They will all then be segmented into their breakout rooms, and then you as the administrator can drop into each room at your own convenience. This is how, towards the end of the American Revolution class, we were able to get around the problem of students not reaching out to the other students in the partner institutions. So this was a very useful function both in the closed model, remote model class, and in the bifurcated model.
So the students in the other breakup groups can't?
They can't see each other. They are just factored off into the group. I think what has happened here is I do not have administrative clearance on this computer. But let's see if I can do it. Now, another benefit of Zoom is you can, I'm not doing this, but when you set up each Zoom meeting, you can record it onto your computer or onto the cloud. As a institution that has a professional subscription, I believe there are 20 floating subscriptions on campus, which enable you to record the entirety of the Zoom meeting and then host it on cloud, and it provides you with a link that you can then send to students so they can go back over and look at what you've done. Now, breakout rooms and these other remote functions make that very difficult because those aren't recorded, so they can have their private conversations, and those won't be saved for posterity's sake. But again, that's another feature that we found very useful, especially for students in the second course who we had a number of students who were involved in the Montevallo basketball team, and they couldn't meet several meetings, so we were able to send them their recorded sessions, and they were able to go over them in time. Also, you can save the chat in a very similar way, so you can save that as a Word file and send it on to the students as well. Let's see. Let me just demonstrate some of their functions here. All right, so I sent out a message to everybody. You can direct individual messages to key speakers as the administrator. They can do the same. And this gives you what I've done there is clicked on the save chat function so you can save the chat as it had been.
No, he
Wait.
Wonderful. All right, so what I think we'll do in terms of that is I'll figure this out and demonstrate that on the Tuesday session. But again, what this should demonstrate, despite some of the hiccups here, is that this is a relatively easy program to use for faculty who don't have much training on the IT side of things. We've used it to good effect, and the student feedback that we've gotten, we've had one student, for instance, who was involved she was a student at University of Virginia Wise, who's recently got into a pre-med program. But she was able to use Zoom to Skype into one of her pre-med pre-acceptance lectures, and she was able to dazzle them by showing them, sharing her CV on the screen, etc. And she later claimed that had helped her get a place within the.
I don't know.
I changed the admin settings. Okay.
Well, it says private, but.
Well, he's got it open though for us.
Okay, I'm going to try something. Okay, so as the administrator, I also have the ability to shut people out of the meeting if I so desire. So I want to remove this Ben Bankhurst because he is annoying. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of Keith because Keith had that faux pas with the mute button there. So.
I don't blame you.
But you also have the ability to end the meeting for everybody. So, end meeting for all. And what I'm going to do now is join or do another meeting via the computer to see if we got up. So if you download the Zoom program onto your computer, you have the option of just starting a meeting at any point. So that's all I've done is I've signed in, I've gone to the meeting through the app, and it's provided me with this meeting number. What I'm going to now do is email Adam and Rich. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to do this with you. Okay. I'm going to sign on via my phone. So you see here, I have my meeting ID as I've signed in. I can then download the Zoom function, and all I have to do to join this meeting is type that in. So 183, and Keith, if you want to do this as well, you're forgiven.
Thank you.
Put that in.
You're very kind.
What's the code?
It's 183-525-783. And you'll see as we come, we'll chime in. There's Keith, there's me. I'm not going to join audio.
Yeah, I've just come into the way.
Right.
Okay.
So now we have the breakout room function. I can't show it to you because I've been given. Okay, so this is me. I'm managing it as I would a normal meeting. So I've enabled the chat. I can welcome everybody through the chat function. Now I will manage my participants. You can see there's who's signed into the. And if all participants could mute.
Careful, they'll ban you.
I will. I'll just mute mine. It's no big issue. So what I'm going to do here now is establish a breakout room. So you see you have the option at the very beginning. You can automatically establish breakout rooms, and that means that Zoom will chop up the class accordingly in how many rooms you want. So if I did 3 rooms, each of us would be sent, each of the participants would be sent to 3 different rooms. But I'm going to do this manually. So that way, I would see that Keith and myself are in different institutions. I'm going to create 2 rooms. So I've breakout room 1, breakout room 2. Who should I put in breakout room 1? I'll put Lawless and Keith in one, and then I'll banish myself to another. Then Bankhurst. So, what does this do? Now I'm going to open all rooms. So everybody will receive a message on their screen saying that they've been designated to go to a breakout room. They have a set amount of time to do so, and then they will start vanishing from my screen. I'm also going to join one, and there I go. We have now, you'll see that we're left in the main room. It's as if those other participants have gone off to their own conference rooms. Those who haven't been assigned are left in the main room, and that at this point is me, the host, and Laura as well. So, what now can I do? I'm going to close chat. I am now going to go into the breakout rooms. And as the administrator, I can freely float into any of these rooms I so desire. So, in theory, Keith is off in his other room. They're talking about an aspect of class that, or discussion point, and now I can come and see how they're getting on. Which means I just float into their room unannounced. And I could ask them questions. So they're meeting uniquely in this room.
Do they know you're there?
They do now. Keith, can you see me?
I don't see you, but I did see a brief message on my screen that said that you were joining.
Yeah, if I were to say start video, which I can't because we don't have a video on here, then you'd see me.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be that's why you can't necessarily see me there. Okay? So I can now leave the breakout room and I'm going to go to the other breakout room. First, I'm back at the main session, so I'm going to see Laura, who's been left all alone in that session. I'm going to go back to the other breakout room and join breakout room 2.
I thought you were a ghost in my room.
Oh dear.
And see, this is the second breakout room, and you'll note it's just me and myself hanging out here, my bot self. So those are the breakout room functions. So within the larger scale, so if you have 60-odd students and you want them to do group work as if you divide them into groups in your normal classes, you can do that via Zoom. And we found this very useful. We used it on average once every session, really. And we made sure that when we divided the students up into different breakout rooms, we divide the students up equally between Shepherd students and Loyola students, or Shepherd students and other institutions. And that got them to engage the other students very well. And also, if I wanted to bestow a co-host status upon somebody, which I'm not going to do because I don't know if that's been approved on this computer, I can then bestow that on Keith, for instance, and Keith could then also, if he's the other faculty teaching this, he could also drop into the rooms that I'm not covering at precisely the same time. Okay, so I'm going to leave this breakout room.
Can students leave the room on their own accord?
They can, yeah. They can if they decide.
Will that take them back to the main?
It will. If they leave the room, they'll go back to the main room.
So they cut, okay.
So I'm back in the main session. I see that Laura's gone.
Oh, sorry. Freaked out. She had a FedEx delivery.
That's
I had to get dressed.
So whenever this is where chat's important. I can send out a message to everybody saying, that goes out to everybody, as you can see, Keith, in your individual breakout rooms. I will then simply go to breakout rooms again and close all rooms, and all students have about 30 seconds or something like that to be able to come back into the main room once they're closed out of their group. So they all should start filtering into these. So, I've come back. And the others will once that room closes off after the 40-odd seconds. Okay, so that's one of the functions that we found very useful. Skype doesn't have this function. But again, I think this is one of the aspects that makes it more appealing than some of the programs out there. We were the first in Copeland Digital to both utilize this and the polling function, which the digital lab at UNC didn't have the capability to do at the time. And they were amazed that we were able to do this and then started sending out messages to other groups to follow suit. Does anybody have any questions about the breakout room? Yeah.
Or actually a question about the polls. Can you establish those before you open your meeting and then bring them up?
That's
so
exactly.
Bring participants in.
Yeah. Ideally, you do that. Ideally, you're not on the fly in front of your dean and chairs trying to frantically find a question that you can ask everybody. Yeah, that you certainly can. And we did do that. So. As part of the digital, the American Revolution course, we assigned different groups, so 2 Shepherd students, 2 Loyola students, to a revolutionary family. So we had the Nathan Green family, or the Jefferson family, etc. And then we'd ask them polled questions throughout that they were supposed to answer as if they were members of that family. So they'd be following the course content from the role-playing as those family members. And during the Imperial Crisis, for instance, we'd ask, do you support the Stamp Act? Does your family support the Stamp Act? Universally, they'd say no. But then we got closer to independence, different families would say, we don't support independence, we support this. And they could follow the process, they could follow the polls throughout time to see how their family would react at different junctures during the revolutionary debates. So we were able to use those, I think, rather creatively with the topics of the classes. But you can see how this would be very useful in any number of us, in any number of ways in the classroom.
A lot of times when I've attended like webinars and things, they'll have like 3 or 4 of those questions right up front to kind of gauge where everybody in the group is in terms of what we're talking about. So I figure in that case it's something they've already preset and then open the meeting and just
and you can stage them throughout as well. So you can have one set of poll questions, you can have second and third, and then you can just rely on those polls where needed.
It's kind of a nice assessment tool too, just to see if students are getting the material and if you need to recover something. Or
the polling you can also do fill in the blank out questions as well. So I know that some classes like to do games like Jeopardy-esque games in the class. You can structure the polls accordingly to mimic those exercises. So that would be very useful.
You find any kind of a time lag?
No. That's remarkable.
Because I'm watching Keith and here on his screen and up there, and it's instant, but it drives me crazy. There's an artist in Chicago that's the curator who does the Paul Klein artwork, and I've done these for a couple of years with him, and he's got people from all over the world, and you subscribe to this, and he does critiques and he has connection. It's basically, kind of an online networking for artists, and he gives career advice. And so I was testing it with him, and so I'm in my studio with my phone, and I'm, showing my work, and then he and all these people, and one of them was out of South Africa, and driving me nuts because you'd ask a question, I'm not a patient soul. Yeah, come on, buddy.
Well, I can say this, we haven't, so what am I doing with this in the future? I'm doing a team talk class with somebody at the University of Illinois, Springfield, on the topic of Chesapeake loyalism. So we're going to be looking at, we've gotten in touch with the National Archives in Great Britain to provide us with some images of the Loyalist transcription papers, and they'll be effectively adopting a Loyalist from our area and following them throughout the revolution. So we've not had this problem on a national level, but in the future we'd like to obviously reach out to institutions in Great Britain or other countries, and that might pose some problems. But that said, when we had the Japanese speaker in Dr. Gordon's class, this was not an issue.
Well, it might also depend on what they've got on their end.
That's right.
In terms of their bandwidth and all that. And so South Africa can be a problem where, Japan, Korea, no, they're going to be flying.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
So this can be used like on the move.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of ideas, etc. So for example, like an activity class.
Yeah.
I could bring them all in and say, right, your role is, I want you to do 2 miles walk today. These are the spots you have to walk to. When they get there, they've got to show me they've got there.
Yeah, but certainly I think
walk back.
You can organize a meeting and everybody can be present. You can put them in breakout rooms and then they can do that. One thing I would make sure, we did this, we did a sort of a walking project as part of the Revolution course, and one of the problems we had was sometimes you had to make sure that the students know that they should be on their LTE or their mobile networks as opposed to coming in randomly on Wi-Fi that would disrupt them and kick them out of the meeting, etc. So as long as you have a fairly good mobile signal, then that should be fine. Okay. And again, the vast majority of students, and tomorrow, Chris Reiser, who is a student in the Revolution course, will be participating.
So when you actually first introduced it, was there a learning curve with the students?
The first week or two, yes. It was, but I have to say, they are...
They pick it up quickly?
They do.
Because they do it?
Because when you think about what sort of social media they're using, they're not consuming Facebook or anything like that anymore. They're using things like Snapchat, where they're kind of trained to think this way. They're thinking in terms of these, talking to strangers within this sort of framework. So I didn't find that they had any problem with adapting to it.
So I don't know if it works on a smartphone, but as soon as you're on, say, on your laptop, you basically does a screen capture, live screen capture if you want to show PowerPoints or keynotes or videos.
Yes, yeah, that's what it does. And one thing I should have said before launching into the PowerPoint presentation is that was on a shared screen. So they were seeing all of my PowerPoint.
Do they have to log on to a share, or yours, like the master screen?
Yeah, the presenter screen becomes the main screen.
It's a great way to capture. You can hit record and capture your lecture. So if you're showing your PowerPoint, you want to do a voiceover. So your first sort of like presentation, you can record, and therefore if students do miss it, you can just listen to it again. Yeah, and then it just records a link to the cloud, and then you copy the link. I just did that yesterday in our class, and there's no time limit, so it's really nice. So technically, I could give my class on the beach.
Yeah, technically, in fact,
from my bed.
I'll end with some humorous stories about students and where they were beaming in from. Technically, they're supposed to be. We made it very clear that they had to be in a sort of in a room free of distractions. But during spring break, because spring breaks are obviously staged, and since the Coplec digital course we had done was across the network, so we had 2 students from various different Coplec institutions. So it was very difficult to coordinate spring break. It meant that my coordinator and I would actually be teaching on our spring breaks, because that was the only way to do it, because Shepherd has a weird schedule compared to most other Coplec schools. A, we're out earlier than they are, and B, our spring breaks don't jive. So that meant that at any given point through the end of March and early April, your students are going to be off, chiming in from their parents' house, or they're at the beach, etc. They're off, but they're still coming into your class remotely. On one occasion, we had one student who was clearly at the beach, but didn't wanted to hide the fact from us, but we were able to tell because he had aviator shades that were mirrored. So we'd see him on there, and at certain points, it's clear his girlfriend was trying to distract him. So she'd be like dancing in a bikini in front of him, and we'd see that in the aviator shades, and we were able to call him out for that. You know?
So I'm just looking at, so you could put a GoPro on you and link it here. So you could actually go to, say, a concert, and you just pay for one ticket, and everyone logs on.
Well, yeah, I think the quality wouldn't be great.
I'm just saying, you know, so like.
And until you got arrested for videotaping the concert.
It says like, you know, the Masters,
Confiscate your phone.
you know, and it's a real tight,
Right.
and the rest of your friends can stay at home, we'll pay for one ticket.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, you know, can we send Chris Coltrane to the Tate Gallery in London and him do a whole program back, you know, to the students that are here?
I think
You can send me.
from the technical side of things, I think that's doable. Again, how the Tate would react to that.
Right.
Well, I was in St. Petersburg, we went to the Salvador Dali museum there, and they put all their pictures online, and they actually give an audio over them as you go around.
Well, if anybody's interested in getting a Zoom license, we have 20 right now, and some of them aren't actively used. We can get more if there's more interest. We base it on interest. So you need to just reach out, let us know, let Rich know. We can get
Can I also say that we tried Go Black Digital, the Skype option first, Skype Professional, and it did not work.
Okay.
So I know that we have a packet that's packaged into our Microsoft Apple.
Yeah, the Skype for Business, I guess, is yeah.
From my perspective, if it comes down to a money-saving exercise, we had to get rid of Zoom because the justification being we already have Skype.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not necessarily.
It's not comparable.
It's not comparable.
Well, Zoom is through Center for Teaching and Learning, so it's separate from the email package. So we purchased Zoom before we did before IT did the email transition, so we don't have any control over that, but we'll continue with Zoom.
Because I'm just looking from I just really start very simply with just a fundamental, straightforward lecture, see if and then as you get more skilled at it, you just add on.
Yeah. You know, one of the reasons I was attracted to the Zoom model is because I've always been uncomfortable with the, what's it called, the inverted or reverse classroom, which you have the flipped classroom where you record the lecture where you try to gear towards. But I have very interactive lectures where I ask students to respond to certain subjects that I'm presenting there, and this Zoom enables you to do that. I think that one of the reasons that became so prominent is because of the way that we tended to organize online classes. You know, where it was the only way. Well, it was to flip the classroom. You had to if you're basing your course around around a forum. Basically, you don't have an option for students to attend a lecture. And I think they lose out on some of that, especially with people like Chris Coltrane, who's a phenomenal good lecturer. I think the lecture that would translate over Zoom, and he does get his students engaged. So you can still have a fairly conventional sort of lecture class here.
One last question. So like, how do you actually contact students? So sort of like 9 o'clock Monday morning, they just go in and log. But what you set it up so the code goes to the.
You can basically you set up on a normal iCalendar or an online calendar, you can set up a recurring Zoom meeting.
Okay.
They have that Zoom meeting for the rest of the semester, and they know that's the meeting that they're going to attend Tuesday, Thursdays between these times. Yeah. You can also.
And then you could actually,
Yeah. So they know that they have to be there. Yeah.
And I think you can get like a set meeting number or code. I think Jason
that's when you set up a pre-established.
And so you can always access his meeting room. I think it's called a meeting room.
Yeah.
It's sort of always there.
That's absolutely consistent. Again, some things that I didn't really cover in the flustered section of that exhibit. That presentation were some protocol that I think are useful that we've learned going doing this, always have a secondary mode of communication open with your co-teacher. So if there's a problem, you have either you're signed on as sort of a ghost bot, you can connect through Zoom via another device, or you have their phone number or whatever. Also, we found individual chat between the two coordinators very well, very useful. One thing that I would do in the American Revolution course is when my colleague was teaching, when he was lecturing, we would have the chat running, and I would engage with the students via the chat while they were listening to his lecture. So there's one point, for instance, he was talking about the Battle of Saratoga, and there's a famous portrait of John Burgoyne, and I had humorously said something like, "This is John Burgoyne looking freakishly like Tim Curry," you know? And they all started riffing on that. And you might think that's distracting them from the contents of the lecture, but when it came down to the assessment for the exam on the Battle of Saratoga, they all knew who John Burgoyne was. You know, they all knew it's a way back here. So you can do it in very interesting ways. You know, it's sort of like a pop-up video, if you will, in the film. That you can have a running commentary of the lecture as the co-teacher, which we found very useful. Anyway,
Or
thanks.
we should work on getting I know you have before, we could go back and work on getting a classroom set up that has speakers, and have microphones set up around it, you know, on campus to do that. I'm still going back because I think there's really good use of the synchronicity, you know, aspect of it. If you could do that, then if they were more matched peer-wise, I think it would work better. And then if you could, you know, if there were individual, you know, and it's like coming to the BOG meetings in here, and you know, they've got a speaker in the middle, and you've got people that are phoning in, and they can't hear half of what's said, and then there, you know, people like me that they tell you to talk quieter, you know, because it's, you know, too damn loud. And,
well, this was another issue that, I mean, perhaps one of the reasons the bifurcated model didn't work for us with Royal is they had a dedicated room.
Right.
With four cameras, for, you know, the video.
Right.
The audio was sort of synced through the central system. We didn't have that, but I think we did pretty well with what we did have. But I take your point. I do think that if we had a designated space for this sort of thing,
and we know we're going to do more of it rather than less. You know, I mean, it's going to become more and more something we do. We have
the EduTech group.
Make that investment.
Yeah. We do have the EduTech room up in the library, but the problem with that is if I have a class of 15, it becomes difficult to use that.
Right.
So, but again, I think we're going to, I think in the history department, Keith, for instance, I'm going to throw him under the bus again, is going on the Cuba trips and is going to continually work on those courses, and there's the possibility to get students to sort of chime in at some point while you're on.
Wi-Fi access in Cuba is another issue altogether.
Yeah, that's another issue. That's
right.
True. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that one you won't solve.
Right.
Yeah.
Either that or you come home deaf.
That too. That's right. All kinds of problems there.
Thanks, Ben.